In today's video, we're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern, taking a look at very, very hot temperatures. The heat index here in Virginia, at least where I'm from, was over 120. I believe we pushed 126 or 127 today. Obviously, that wasn't the true temperature, it was just the heat index, but it felt hotter than I have ever felt in my entire life. So very, very hot for many in the east. The actual temperature here was 102 or 103, which is extremely hot, obviously. 90s is already a heat wave if you get it 3 days in a row. But if you're getting nearly 100 degrees or above for 3 days in a row, that's a severe heat wave. And that's what we're dealing with in parts of Virginia and other surrounding states. Very, very hot. It's also been very dry and sunny. That's aided in this being just extremely hot, but we are going to see some storminess move in soon. And you can imagine with these very hot temperatures, very high dew points, which is why the heat index has been so high, which is taking the humidity and the temperature into account. When we mix that with some overall stormy weather moving in, you can imagine there's probably going to be some pretty violent thunderstorms. So we're going to be discussing that, the overall upcoming pattern through the next 15 days, and even tropical storm Andrea or Andrea, I don't know which pronunciation they're using, but that one has gone ahead and formed. We talked about it yesterday, having a 60% chance of development. It went ahead and developed. Obviously, there was more chance than not of it happening, so it shouldn't come as a huge surprise. It's a pretty typical time of year also for our first tropical storm, maybe even a little late, maybe a couple of weeks late for our first tropical storm. So it's kind of going so far very early, but still going according kind of to how I've imagined the hurricane season would. So we're going to discuss all these things. Let's start out by taking a look at the past temperatures. And typically I do like 10 or 15 or 20 day periods for this. We're looking at the past 3 days just to give you an idea of how hot this little heat wave has been. Shouldn't even call it little. That's a little disrespectful for it because it's a very impressive heat wave. We've had these extremely cool temperatures out west. We're talking 10, 15, 20 degrees below normal out there, especially in the mountainous west there, kind of from the Sierra Nevada mountains northward into the northern Rockies and then into a lot of central Canada. This is what we call a negative PNA. I don't like to break it down every video, but really it's a colder air mass over the western areas of North America, and this forces essentially the opposite conditions to develop in the east, because a lot of the heat that would be over these areas is moving around that cold air mass and having to spill over into the east. The opposite of this would be a positive PNA, which we'll actually just show you here. Let's take a look here. This is a positive PNA. This was June 1st, and we can see very warm temperatures in the west, positive PNA. This causes the cold to spill over into the east. So the PNA is a very strong indicator of what to expect in the east. Very, very valuable tool, and we use it a lot here. And you could tell in the east, especially in these red areas, we have had temperatures that have been, for the most part, 10, 15, 20 degrees above normal from the upper Midwest through the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and then into parts of the Northeast in particular. We've had the most above average temperatures. My sister is in Florida today. And it is much hotter here in Virginia than it is in Florida. So these heat waves can be really interesting, and oftentimes areas a little further north and inland, even though I'm near the coast, but areas inland and north typically can see even hotter temperatures in these types of air masses than areas like Florida, where you'd expect it to be the hottest, interestingly enough. Let's take a look at the upcoming temperatures, and I can tell you that this heat wave is not going to last forever. We see very hot temperatures for today. We see tomorrow on Wednesday, it's still very, very hot in the east. Thursday, pretty hot. Friday, so through this week. But what we see in the longer range is a lot of this. Kind of near normal. So we see a deviation of maybe 5 to 7 degrees from normal for most areas, either in the below or above direction. So overall, this is a pretty average look in the east, and maybe even cooler than normal, if anything, by the time we're looking at July 1st. And that's going to be a week from today. And what we're seeing in the West is actually the cause of this is the return of that positive PNA look. The good news here is that this does not take us back into what we saw earlier on in June and late in May, where we're actually really, really cold compared to normal, where we're looking at 70s and maybe pushing 80 in some of these spots. We don't get that cool. Now in these positive PNA situations, we're mostly seeing temperatures that are like, let's say your average is 85. you're more so looking at like 82, 81. So hardly a noticeable difference, just very, very average feeling for most areas in here. And I do expect that type of pattern to mostly persist, and we're seeing that from the models. Straight through July 9th here, which is the end of the model run here, we have a lot of heat out in the west. These areas will be pretty considerably above normal. But again, kind of these yellows and light blues going on in the east, that is going to be, 3-5 degrees above normal, or maybe exactly average, or maybe a degree or two below normal. So again, you're not going to notice the difference between what is average and what is on screen here. It's very, very slight differences from what's typical. So after this major heat wave is said and done, which again, by later this week, it will be finishing up with a lot of that storminess coming in, we're going to return to a very average summer-like pattern. That's just for temperatures, though. Let's take a look at what the storminess is going to do. And again, we've been mostly very dry in a lot of the hottest areas here. Some of the areas that have been the hottest, there is some isolated thunderstorm activity happening, but it isn't super widespread, and really it's pretty minimal even where it's at. It's as we move towards like Thursday here, where we start to see the eastern states starting to get more impacted by thunderstorm activity, like Thursday the 26th here. Friday on the 27th as well, a lot of the east is dealing with a clearly much more activity than what we've been seeing during this heat wave. And again, right around here is when we start to see things cooling back off to a more typical summertime pattern. Saturday the 28th, storminess is around Sunday the 29th, so very, very different than what we've been dealing with. Even Tuesday the 1st into Wednesday the 2nd looks quite stormy. We do thankfully get a dry pattern between the 3rd of July. We're here in actually Chesapeake, Virginia. If any of you are familiar with there, they have a firework event on the 3rd of July, not the 4th. So looks nice for that, for any of my local folks. And then Friday on the 4th of July, there is some storminess around, but mostly looks isolated and should be pretty good conditions for most areas, at least in the deep south central and southeastern states. It's once you move up into the Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast where there is some sketchiness up there, maybe some thunderstorms around, and also the Rockies into some of the northern plains there. We're seeing some thunderstorm activity there as well. Even Florida, but Georgia and Florida, can't really rule out thunderstorms any day of the summer, so no surprise there whatsoever. As we keep going, and I know I'm kind of like flying through this today for some reason, Sunday the 6th, we see another storm system moving into the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. Monday the 7th, that one's moved off. We still see some leftover storminess around. And the 9th, we don't even get past the morning, but it looks like there is going to be quite a bit of activity, especially in these areas. We have a low here and some rising warm air moving up. So definitely that's causing some instability to spark up some activity in there. Overall, quieter pattern precipitation-wise while we're having this extreme heat wave. But afterwards, I actually think this is more of an active pattern than what's typical. So I'd say above average activity, very typical temperatures again after this upcoming weekend, and heat wave for the most part is done. Looking at the total precipitation, we do see a lot of it east of the Rockies. Probably overall average amounts for a lot of these eastern areas where we're seeing the reds and kind of browns. There is a couple of pockets in here that are probably above average. But when you take into account that all of this is starting, let's see, 1, 2, 3 or 4 days from now, we're missing kind of like four days out of the 14 days. So for the most part, after this dry pattern is over, it is above average because all of this is happening on the second half of the map. So even though when we look at this, the anomalies here for the next 15 days, it's looking very average for these areas. Most of this is being held back by the next few days. And once we get past that and look at this graphic, it should actually move into more of a green, maybe even blue direction with the above average precipitation. So stay tuned for our videos Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We should see this increasing. Time will tell, of course, though. But for now, these central areas of the United States, like the upper Midwest, the plains, down into some of the Four Corner states, definitely looking above average, even starting now. And then a little bit drier there for the Northwest into the North Central states overall. Now, looking at the Storm Prediction Center outlooks, here's day 1 for Tuesday on the 24th today. In the lighter green areas, we have a general thunderstorm risk. We do not expect severe weather here, just general thunderstorms, but these forecasts are very tricky, so heed every watch. warning and advisory, so just pay attention in general. We have 2 darker green areas. One is clearly much larger than the other, but nevertheless just as intense as what we're expecting. And that is where we expect isolated severe weather to occur there in that marginal risk area. Just to the east of the Rockies in Wyoming and Colorado and some of those plain states, we do have a yellow area, and that's our level 2 slight risk, where we expect more scattered about severe weather to be occurring. Moving towards day 2, here for Wednesday on the 25th, same thing. We have a very large general thunderstorm risk area, large marginal risk area, and a slight risk down there for the southeast, but it's not till Thursday again where we're actually seeing more rainfall. But these days do have scattered about thunderstorms that could be very impactful. For day 3, interestingly enough, on Thursday, there's 3 marginal risks, very fitting. Could see some slight risk upgrades in there. Usually when it's at day 3, there's definitely time for these things to evolve. So don't be surprised, especially the southeast one, maybe the Midwest one there, if we see a slight risk by the time we're getting closer to Thursday. Just want to check the extended day outlooks, and good thing I did, because we do have one here for Friday the 27th in the northern plains. And this translates roughly to a slight risk. They don't use the same scale, but this is going to be the same percentage as a slight risk. So that translates to at least a slight risk in those yellow areas for Friday on the 27th. Now this has me wanting to kind of double check all the days. So, okay, we're good. Let's move on to the tropics, where we do, again, have tropical storm Andrea out there in the middle of the North Atlantic, very far in the North Atlantic for this early in the season. So it is an interesting storm, but you could see it is moving generally northeastward, kind of like east-northeastward. And it's expected to kind of dissipate here by time we're reaching tomorrow. So it's interesting. It gets us one name down the list on the hurricane names and overall tropical storm names, but it's not going to do anything to anybody, which is really the best type of storm if you're just interested in looking at these storms developing. And it's, it's really cool when they don't impact anybody, unless a ship moves through there, which really, I would imagine they can probably quite easily avoid a storm like this, but who knows? Even then, not the craziest storm in the world, but interesting to see. And again, now we're under the B name for our next system that we see eventually. So we'll keep our eyes on the tropic. Anytime we see any chances of development, we will obviously show you guys in our daily videos. So stay tuned for all of that hurricane season stuff. The rest of the severe weather season we're going to be covering. And then before you know it, we'll be moving into fall and winter, which is just going to be super exciting as well. We're already halfway through the year. I cannot believe that. We're actually about to be beyond the halfway mark, which is just insane. With all that being said, be sure to subscribe. We upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload, so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.